we've reached the final sanding of the foam before we put the fiberglass on. And I've got a little trick, or a tip. And usually the final sanding is where I get impatient and start kind of cutting corners and not getting it level. But the larger that your sanding surface is, the smoother and more uniform you can make the contours of your final shaping. So I am using something that my dad taught me years ago. God bless him. I made my own sanding block. Now this piece is a piece of Luan or door skin. This is just an old piece of plywood that I rounded over the top. But what I have done is I have stuck a piece of 120 grit sandpaper to this board, and it works really well. And also you can see the edge of this is beveled. It's beveled with sandpaper, or I used my belt sander, but you can see that corner, how it's beveled real nice, so that the edge doesn't catch and gouge your foam. But with this 120 grit sandpaper on there, you get just an amazingly smooth surface. And what I stuck it on there with is some 3M adhesive. This is some leftover adhesive they had from the drywall project that I did in the kitchen. So you can make your own custom sanding blocks. This is a big wide one. You can also make little narrow ones. Here's a little narrow one that I made out of a paint stick. And those will help you get in these little teeny spots and get just the shaping and contouring that you want to get. And you save a lot of money. Sanding blocks are inexplicably expensive. So with just a little bit of your own ingenuity, you can do a really less expensive job. So right now I'm just making these final sanding, the final contours. I'm going to fill some of this in, some of these gouges in with Bondo now. But I had to show you this, because this makes all the difference. On these long curves, just amazing. Looks like it's laser cut. So I'll be back momentarily with the rest of the project in part 2 of the Hullabaloo modifications. I've got some deep cracks along here, and I could use more pour foam and pour it in there, but I'd have to kind of turn it on I'd have to turn it horizontal, and I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to use is some Bondo body filler that I got at Lowe's, and this was $24 for a gallon of this Bondo. So I'm going to use this Bondo, mix it up, and put it in these cracks to smooth out the surface for putting down the fiberglass mat. Okay, the way Bondo works is it's a putty, fiberglass resin type putty, and it comes with this red catalyst, and you knead the catalyst good. You get the amount of putty you want. It says for a golf ball size, you're supposed to put a 1 1/4 inch strip of this putty, this catalyst. So I've got about 2 golf ball sizes here. So I'm going to put a 1 inch, 2 inch, about a 2 1/2 inch strip. And as you mix this, you will see the color change, and you'll know that it's... So we'll mix this up real quick, make it a nice rust color. Mix it thoroughly. One of the tricks about using Bondo when you're using foam is you got to make sure you get the surface exactly the way you want it, because when you try to sand Bondo on top of foam, the Bondo is denser and harder, so a lot of times you'll get uneven sanding, and that will be an issue because it'll create depressions around the edge of the Bondo where the foam meets the Bondo, which is what you're trying to use the Bondo to fix to begin with. So, okay. I think we have an even color there, so what I'm going to do is put some of this in this crack here. I've made sure that the crack has had all of the sanded foam areas blown out of it. Because that sand, that dust, causes the Bondo not to stick properly. That's going to work just fine, it looks like. And if this were on a vehicle or something like that, metal, I would leave a lot more excess Bondo to sand away. But as I mentioned before, I don't want to have to sand too much because it's likely to sand uneven. I'm going to try to get as close as I can right away. I do believe it's starting to set up. Yeah. Yeah, it's starting to catalyze, so it's getting harder to work with. Oh. It's a tar, baby! Let me build that up a little bit. Come on now. Setting up fast now. Oh boy, is it setting up fast. Oh, I'm not making it. If it sets up on you too much, get it as smooth as you can and then stop doing what you're doing because you're not going to want to have to sand off a whole bunch. Yeah. That was much more rapid than I expected it to set up. So the temperature today is hot enough. What I should do is chill it in the freezer. So that's our first application of Bondo. Now I've got to find all the little holes and do this some more. Here's a close-up of the first Bondo that I just put in that crack in the previous clip. And the drying time on this was the time it took me to eat 4 homemade soft tacos, which is not a very long time. If you were to put it into correct time increments, that would be about 15 minutes. And I've put the rest of the Bondo into the freezer during that period of time to cool it down because it was really heating up fast. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and sand this a little bit. I'll zoom in. I'm going to sand it very gently because I don't want to sand away the foam in the process of sanding away the Bondo. So So I'm going to sand it until I start hitting foam. See what we have. It's set up good. You can see it's not sticking to the... I can put another thin coat over that to get these little pieces here. But that is pretty smooth. That's nothing you'd be able to see underneath of the thick fiberglass mat that I have. So that Bondo is going to do the job just fine. So I'm going to go around the rest of the boat, finding any cracks that need to be filled in, and put the Bondo on. Well, greetings again. We're further along in the sanding process with the help of my trusty chicken. And I'm going to continue to sand this down, get the shape the way that I want it. I've been filling it in, the discolored areas of the Bondo that I showed you earlier. What I want to look at now is this is the mat that I got. The gentleman at the fiberglass coatings asked me if I wanted to do it in one layer or two, and I said, well, let's try one. So I have this big thick mat. It's got the woven surface on the front, and then on the back it kind of has this spongy absorbing surface. Back, front, the front and the back. So we're going to try to get it on one, and I'm going to see if it's long enough. And it's going to be just right. I needed a little overlap in the back. It's going to. Good, it's going to be sticky. Flip it over the right way. Oh yeah, it's going to be just right. Look. Oh yeah, that's excellent. Perfect length. It actually covers all the way to the side, which is superb. So I'll be able to form that onto there. Most excellent. So I'm going to keep sanding before I have to get to the real nitty-gritty. I'm working on this little tunnel here that's supposed to allow the boat to go into very shallow water. But this is all theoretical. But I've got a really good, even, symmetrical design here. And so I'm using the Bondo to smooth it out so that when I go to put the glass on it, it will be nice and symmetrical. Fill in all these gaps here. very hopeful that this will work, but there's no telling because hydrodynamics are whatever they are. But it's looking good. So I'm hoping that the water will come right down, it'll be pressed, and it'll roll over the edges and fill up this entire tunnel and make a nice bump for the prop to catch. But it might do nothing of the sort.